The rain-slick streets of Cadiz gleamed under the sodium lamps like veins of molten silver, and I slammed the car door so hard it echoed off the whitewashed walls of the old town. Charlotte's voice cracked through the phone line, raw and desperate. "Alex, she's falling apart. Mom's leaving Dad, and I can't watch her drown alone." I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened, the weight of her plea sinking into my chest like the humid Atlantic fog rolling in from the bay. I'd known Charlotte since we were kids chasing fireflies in the overgrown yard of her family's estate on the outskirts of Sanlúcar de Barrameda, that sun-baked corner of western Spain where the sherry vines twisted like secrets under the relentless Andalusian sky. She was the golden girl, vibrant, straight as an arrow, with a laugh that could coax blooms from the parched earth. Me? I was the quiet storm, the one who fixed things in the shadows, nursing my own hidden aches for women who never looked twice. When she begged me to come, to play therapist to her unraveling mother, Catherine, I said yes because that's what you do for the friend who pulled you from the wreckage of your own family's implosion. What I didn't say was that I'd always harbored a flicker of something more for Charlotte, a soft, unspoken yearning that I buried under layers of platonic loyalty. And Catherine? I'd only met her a handful of times at holidays, a poised woman in her mid-40s with auburn hair that caught the light like autumn leaves, her smile polite but distant, the kind of straight-laced grace that screamed untouchable. The drive from my cramped apartment in Seville to their sprawling finca took 2 hours, the highway flanked by cork oaks that whispered omens in the wind. Charlotte met me at the wrought iron gates, her dark curls frizzing in the mist, eyes red-rimmed but fierce. She hugged me too tight, her vanilla perfume mingling with the salt air. "Thank God you're here," she murmured, pulling back to shove an envelope into my hand. "Crisp euros, more than I'd see in a month slinging coffee at the cafe. For your time. You're a lifesaver, Alex. Mom's. She's locked herself in the library since the papers came through. Won't eat, won't talk. Dad's already shacked up with that lawyer from Jerez." I pocketed the cash without a word, the paper crinkling like a guilty secret. It felt wrong, being paid to mend what I couldn't even fix in myself, but Charlotte's desperation was a mirror to my own fractures. We trudged up the gravel path, past the olive groves where Catherine had once confided, over rows at a family barbecue, that marriage was just a comfortable cage. I'd nodded then, sipping my drink, wondering if she sensed the invisible bars I lived behind. The house loomed like a faded postcard from Spain's golden age, terracotta tiles, arched doorways dripping with bougainvillea, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Charlotte led me to the library, a cavern of leather-bound tomes and flickering candlelight, where Catherine sat curled in an armchair by the window, staring at the storm-lashed sea beyond the cliffs. She looked smaller than I remembered, her linen blouse rumpled, auburn waves escaping a loose bun, green eyes hollowed by shadows. At 46, she was still striking, high cheekbones, a smattering of freckles across her nose from summers tending the vineyard. But grief had carved lines that no amount of poised elegance could hide. "Alex is here," Charlotte announced softly, hovering in the doorway like a sentinel. Catherine's gaze flicked up, startled, then softened into something like relief. "The friend with the steady hands," she said, her voice a husky murmur laced with that faint American twang from her expatriate youth. Her family had fled the States for Spain in the 80s, chasing reinvention amid Franco's fading echoes. She extended a hand, cool and trembling. I took it, feeling the pulse of her vulnerability sync with my own buried pulse. We started slow that first evening, the three of us around the scarred oak table in the kitchen, plates of untouched gazpacho steaming between us. Charlotte chattered to fill the silence, about her graphic design gigs in Madrid, the latest indie band blowing up on Spotify. But her eyes darted to her mother, pleading. Catherine picked at her nails then finally spoke. 30 years. I thought love was endurance, Alex. Turns out it's just erosion." Her words hung there, sharp as the thunder rumbling offshore. I leaned in, my coffee mug warm against my palms. "Endurance isn't love if it's killing you," I replied, the truth slipping out before I could temper it. Charlotte shot me a grateful glance, but Catherine's eyes lingered on mine a beat too long, searching. Over the next week, I became a fixture in their sun-dappled world. Mornings I'd coax Catherine into walks along the beach at Bajo de Guia, where the tide pools mirrored the turmoil in her chest. She'd talk in fits and starts, about the husband who'd traded her for a younger model, The vineyard she'd poured her soul into only to watch it wither under his neglect. I built this life for them, she'd say, kicking at the sand. And now it's rubble. I'd listen, nodding, offering fragments of my own story. The dead-end job, the ex who ghosted me after I came out to my folks, the way Spain's expatriate bubble let me breathe without the weight of small-town judgment back home. Charlotte hovered on the periphery, grateful but distant, her text to me laced with emojis and inside jokes. "You're magic," she'd write. "Don't know what we'd do without you. But magic has a way of twisting." One afternoon, as Charlotte dashed to Seville for a client meeting, Catherine and I found ourselves alone in the vineyard. The rows of Palomino grapes stretched toward the horizon, heavy with promise under the relentless sun. She handed me a pair of shears, her fingers brushing mine, electric, unintended. "Help me prune," she said, and we worked in companionable silence, the snip of blades punctuating the cicada hum. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, laughing ruefully. "Look at me, queen of the vines, covered in dirt." I smiled, clipping a wayward shoot. "Dirt suits you. Makes you real." That's when it shifted. Her laughter faded, and she straightened, eyes locking on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "You see me, Alex. Not the wife, not the mother, just me." The air thickened, charged like the moments before a squall. I wanted to look away, to remember the envelope of cash, the platonic lines I'd sworn not to cross. But her hand found my arm, tentative, warm. I've never felt this. Unburdened. My heart hammered. "Catherine." I started, but the word dissolved as she stepped closer, the space between us humming with unspoken questions. We didn't kiss, not then. But that touch lingered, a spark in the dry tinder of our isolation. Evenings blurred into confessions over bottles of manzanilla, the sherry's nutty bite loosening tongues. She'd recount stolen glances at women in her youth, dismissed as phases in the rigid Catholic upbringing her American parents had transplanted to Spanish soil. "I married young, thought it was duty," she'd whisper, the candle flames dancing in her eyes. I'd share my own quiet rebellions, the underground queer poetry slams in Seville, the ache of loving from afar. Charlotte noticed the change, her smiles tightening. "You two are thick as thieves now," she'd tease, but her voice carried an undercurrent of unease. The betrayal crept in like fog off the bay. It was Charlotte who found the note first, a scrap of paper on the kitchen counter where I jotted a reminder for Catherine about a therapist in Cadiz, but folded inside was a pressed olive leaf from our vineyard walk, a silly token I'd tucked away. She confronted me that night, after Catherine had retired early, her face pale in the moonlight filtering through the shutters. "What's going on, Alex? You're not just helping anymore. I see how she looks at you like you're her lifeline. And you." God, your eyes light up around her. I froze, the air in the guest room turning stale. "It's nothing," I lied, but my voice cracked. She stepped closer, hurt etching her features. "Nothing? I paid you to fix her, not fall into whatever this is. She's straight, Alex. My mom. And you're my best friend. This feels like you're taking something from us." Her words sliced deep, exposing the rot I'd ignored. Betrayal? It wasn't just Catherine's heart I'd stirred. It was Charlotte's trust, the fragile thread of our bond forged in childhood secrets. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back, tears spilling. "I thought you got it, family first. But this? It's selfish." She stormed out, the door slamming like a final punctuation. I sank onto the bed, the envelope's ghost burning in my pocket. Paid friend. Hired heart. What had I become? The climax shattered on a Friday evening, the kind where the Andalusian sky bled crimson over the Atlantic. Charlotte had returned from Madrid early, her suitcase thudding in the hall like an accusation. She'd pieced it together, the late-night talks bleeding into dawn, the way Catherine hummed old Joan Baez's tunes I'd played on my phone, the charged silences that followed me like shadows. Dinner was a minefield. Forced chatter about the harvest, clinking forks masking the tension. Then Catherine, emboldened by a second glass of Rioja, set down her napkin. "We need to talk," she said, her gaze sweeping from daughter to me, steady but trembling. "About what's real here." Charlotte's fork clattered. "Real? Mom, you're delusional. Alex is here because I asked her to be, because I trusted her." Her voice rose, cracking on the edges. Catherine's face crumpled, but she pressed on. It's more than that now, Lottie. For both of us. The room spun into chaos. Charlotte's accusations flying like shrapnel. You're using her. She's not some rebound, she's my friend. I stood, hands raised, but the words stuck, guilt choking me. Catherine reached for her daughter, pleading. This isn't about betrayal. It's about finally seeing myself. The storm broke outside, rain lashing the windows as Charlotte fled to her room, sobs echoing down the hall. Catherine turned to me, eyes glistening. I didn't mean for this, she whispered. But her hand found mine under the table, a desperate anchor. For a moment the world narrowed to that touch, the raw, aching possibility of us. But Charlotte's pain was a siren call, pulling me back. I slipped away into the night, driving the winding coast road toward Cadiz, wipers slashing at the downpour, my mind a torrent of what-ifs. Days blurred into a fragile truce. Charlotte iced me out, her text curt. Fix this or leave. Catherine, caught in the crossfire, withdrew into the vines, her silhouette a solitary ghost against the horizon. I stayed, compelled by the mess I'd helped make, mediating over lukewarm teas and strained silences. One evening as the sun dipped low, painting the cliffs in hues of regret, Charlotte cornered me in the garden. Why her, Alex? Why not? I don't know, someone else. Her voice was small, vulnerable, the girl I'd known peeking through the armor. I hesitated, the unspoken truth bubbling up, the flicker I'd always felt for her, now tangled with this new blaze. Because she saw me first, I admitted. But you've always been the one who mattered most. Tears welled in her eyes and she collapsed into my arms, the hug fierce and forgiving. I was scared, she confessed, of losing you both. We stood there as dusk fell, the jasmine weaving its spell, and in that embrace the betrayal transmuted. Not erased but alchemized into something human, flawed, enduring. Catherine joined us later, drawn by the light from the terrace. The three of us sat under the stars, a bottle of sherry passed hand to hand, words flowing freer now. She spoke of reinvention, not as escape but as reclamation. Love isn't a cage or a cure, she said, her hand resting lightly on mine, platonic now, a bridge rather than a spark. It's the space to grow, even when it hurts. Charlotte nodded, squeezing her mother's shoulder, then mine. We rebuild together. No more secrets. In the weeks that followed, the finca stirred back to life. Catherine dove into the vineyard with renewed fire, plotting expansions with a local co-op, her laughter ringing through the rows. Charlotte and I mended our rhythm, late-night drives to beach bars in Tarifa, blasting Phoebe Bridgers until our throats ached with song. The attraction between Catherine and me simmered down to embers, a quiet respect born of shared vulnerability, not consummated but honored. She'd date tentatively, a potter from Rota, a bookseller in Jerez, women who matched her awakening, gentle explorations under the same sky that had witnessed our storm. As for Charlotte and me, our bond deepened, laced with a new honesty. One night, over gelato on the Cadiz promenade, she turned to me, eyes sparkling with that old mischief. You know, if you'd ever wanted to. With me. She trailed off, blushing. I laughed, soft and true. Maybe in another life. But this? Us? It's enough. She grinned, linking her arm through mine. And we walked into the salt-kissed night. The Atlantic whispering promises of tomorrow's untethered. Spain's western edge, with its windswept cliffs and ancient grudges, taught us that love, familial, forbidden, fleeting, isn't about perfection. It's the messy harvest after the rain. The vines that twist and thrive despite the shears. We emerged scarred but whole, three women rewriting our story under the unyielding sun. And in the quiet moments when the fog lifts and the sea gleams, I know we'd choose the ache again, for the light it lets in. The summer heat clung to western Spain like a lover unwilling to let go, turning the air thick and golden as honey dripping from the comb. By July, the finca had transformed from a mausoleum of marital fallout into a tentative sanctuary, buzzing with the low hum of renewal. Catherine's hands, once idle and trembling, now moved with purpose through the vineyard, tying vines, tasting soil, her auburn hair tied back with a scarf that fluttered like a flag of surrender. She'd enrolled in a winemaking course in Jerez, her notebook filled with sketches of barrel-aging charts and varietal hybrids, her voice gaining that old lilt of excitement when she cornered me at breakfast. Alex, imagine, a blend of Palomino and something wilder, like Moscatel from the Sierras. It could be our redemption vintage. I nodded, stirring my café con leche, the steam curling like questions I no longer voiced. Our moment, as Charlotte dubbed it in hushed tones, had cooled to a comfortable ember, tended but not fanned. It was there in the way Catherine's gaze would linger during these talks. A soft acknowledgement, laced with gratitude rather than hunger. No grand declarations, no stolen kisses in the arbor. Just the quiet poetry of two souls who'd brushed against possibility and chosen grace instead. "You're the catalyst," she'd say sometimes, squeezing my shoulder as we passed in the hall. "Don't ever underestimate that." Charlotte, ever the bridge builder, orchestrated our fragile harmony with the precision of her design software. She'd drag us on outings, picnics at the Roman ruins of Bello Claudia, where the marble column stood sentinel against the crashing surf, or sunset sails from El Puerto de Santa Maria, the boat rocking us into laughter as dolphins arced alongside. "To new chapters," she'd toast with plastic cups of fizz, her dark curls whipping in the breeze, and we'd clink, the salt on our lips sealing the pact. But beneath the levity, fissures lingered. I'd catch her watching Catherine and me, a shadow of doubt in her eyes, as if waiting for the next fracture. The conflict reignited in August, when the heat wave scorched the earth and tempers frayed like overripe fruit. Catherine's first date was the spark, a woman named Elena, a ceramicist from Rhoda with sun-kissed skin and a laugh like wind chimes. Charlotte had encouraged it, even helped pick the outfit. A flowing maxi dress the color of ripening figs, paired with espadrilles that clicked softly on the terrace tiles. "Go get him, Mom," she'd said, hugging her tight. But as Catherine drove off toward the coastal galleries, Charlotte's smile faltered. She turned to me in the empty kitchen, arms crossed like a barrier. "This feels weird." "Like good weird? But what if she gets hurt again?" I leaned against the counter, the cool marble grounding me. "Then we pick up the pieces. Like always." But Charlotte's eyes narrowed, the old accusation resurfacing. "We? Or you? You've got this thing with her still. I see it, Alex. The way you two orbit each other." Her voice trembled, not with anger now but fear. The raw edge of a daughter who'd lost her anchor once and dreaded the echo. I stepped forward, aching to close the gap. "It's not like that anymore. It was a bridge, Lottie. To help her cross. We're friends, all of us." She searched my face, then deflated, sinking onto a stool. "I know. God, I know. But paying you started this whole mess. Made it feel transactional, like love's for sale." The envelope's shadow loomed again. That crinkle of cash now a specter in our shared history. I knelt beside her, taking her hands. Callous from her sketchpad, warm and familiar. "It wasn't about the money. It was about you. Always has been." For a heartbeat, the air hummed with the unsaid. The flicker I'd confessed that night in the garden. The what if of us that we'd both sidestepped. She squeezed my fingers, her thumb tracing my knuckle, and whispered, "Promise me we don't lose this." Elena became a fixture, her pottery vases blooming on the finca's shelves like invitations to a fuller life. Dinner stretched late, the four of us around the long table laden with paella and grilled sardines, stories weaving through the cigarette smoke, Elena's tales of firing kills under moonlit skies, Catherine's dreams of exporting their wine to American markets, Charlotte's mock horror at my latest botched attempt at flamenco guitar. Laughter came easier, but so did the undercurrents. One night, after too much sangria, Elena pulled Catherine onto the makeshift dance floor in the courtyard, their bodies swaying to the strains of a Bluetooth Cameron de la Isla track. Charlotte watched from the shadows, her wine glass gripped too tight, and when I slid beside her she muttered, "It's beautiful, but part of me wants to hate it." The betrayal this time wasn't mine or Catherine's, it was the world's, indifferent and cruel. September brought the gales, Atlantic winds howling in from the straits, uprooting vines and flooding the lower fields. The vineyard, Catherine's phoenix, suffered worst. Fungal rot creeping through the palomino rose, a harvest halved before it ripened. She threw herself into the fight. Nights in the mud with fungicide sprayers. Days haggling with insurers in broken Spanish laced with American bluntness. Elena was there, steady as clay, her hands gentle on Catherine's shoulders during breakdowns in the barn. But Charlotte and I? We rallied, hauling tarps and digging trenches, our friendship forged anew in the muck. It was during one such storm that the true climax crested, not in screams, but in a quiet unraveling on the cliffside path above the bay. The wind whipped our ponchos like sails, rain stinging our faces as we trudged back from securing the irrigation lines. Catherine slipped on the slick rocks, her ankle twisting with a sickening pop. Elena was en route for a workshop. It was just us three, hauling her up the incline, her weight a shared burden. Back at the house, as I wrapped the swelling joint with ice packs, Catherine gripped my hand, pain etching her features. "I can't do this alone," she gasped, not just about the ankle but the deeper wound, the fear that every good thing crumbled. Charlotte, kneeling on the rug, looked up, her face streaked with mud and tears. "You're not alone, Mom. We're right here." But her eyes met mine over Catherine's bent form, and in that gaze the floodgates cracked. "All of us," she added, voice breaking. The room filled with sobs, Catherine's from the ache in her bones, Charlotte's from the weight of almost lost, mine from the miracle of holding on. Elena arrived hours later, her truck's headlights cutting the dark, and together we tended the invalid, stories and soup bridging the night. In the aftermath, as Catherine healed on the wicker chaise with books and borrowed crutches, truth surfaced like driftwood after the tide. Charlotte admitted her jealousy, not of me and Catherine, but of the ease they'd found in each other, a mirror to her own stalled heart. "I've been hiding behind designs and deadlines," she confessed one dawn, as we sipped coffee on the terrace, the sea a slate-gray calm. "Afraid to feel anything real." I shared my own stalls, the way I'd armored my queerness in casual flings, never risking the depths Charlotte and her mother embodied. Catherine, overhearing from her perch, chimed in. "Darling, love's not a ledger. It's the deficit that teaches us abundance." The humanistic turn came softly, in the harvest salvage. What grapes survived, we picked by hand, gnarled, resilient clusters that yielded a small but potent yield. Elena's potters will spun labels etched with olive leaves, symbols of our tangled paths. The wine christened Puente Bridge tasted of salt and sun, a vintage born of betrayal's bitter lees. We bottled it under the first cool stars of autumn, labels curling in the damp air, and toasted not to endings, but to the beautiful breakage. Catherine and Elena deepened, their romance a slow-fired glaze. Walks on the beach, shared studios where clay met vines. Charlotte, inspired, packed for a sabbatical in Barcelona, chasing murals and maybe a muse of her own. "Don't wait up," she teased me at the airport, her hug lingering. "But call if you need bailing out." I laughed, waving as her gait swallowed her, the ache sweet now. As winter whispered in, I lingered at the finca, helping with the dormant vines. Catherine and I would sit by the fire, Elena dozing on her shoulder, recounting the summer's tempests. "You changed everything," Catherine said one night, her green eyes reflecting the flames. "Not just me, us." I smiled, the ember between us now a hearth for all. "Friendship's the real vintage," I replied. And in the quiet of western Spain, where the Atlantic meets the ancient earth, we savored it. Flawed, full-bodied, forever. Winter in western Spain wrapped the finca in a hush of silver mists and olive wood fires, the vineyard slumbering under frost-kissed vines like a beast in repose. By December the gales had ebbed, leaving behind a clarity that mirrored the one settling in our bones. Catherine's ankle mended crooked but strong, a subtle limp that she wore like a badge, swinging through the house with Elena's arm as occasional crutch. Their partnership bloomed in the domestic poetry of shared mornings. Elena shaping bowls from river clay while Catherine ground spices for tagine. The kitchen a symphony of clinks and murmurs. I'd watch from the doorway, coffee in hand, marveling at how betrayal's scar had woven into this tapestry. Rough-edged but resilient. Charlotte's absence carved a hollow at first. Her texts from Barcelona a lifeline of memes and midnight confessions. Spray painting a wall shaped like heartbreak, she'd write, attaching photos of vibrant graffiti under gaudy spires. "Missed the chaos, but damn, this feels alive." I missed her fire, the way she'd poke at my defenses until I cracked open. In her stead, I filled the days with odd jobs, tending the greenhouse where poinsettias unfurled like secrets, or driving Catherine to markets in Medina Sidonia, haggling over saffron and almonds. Elena warmed to me slowly, her artist's eye spotting the quiet poetry in my gestures. "You're the glue," she'd say in her lilting accent, pressing a handmade mug into my hands. Quiet but unbreakable. The deeper conflict stirred in the solstice shadows, when old ghosts clawed their way back. It started with a letter, yellowed envelope postmarked from Ohio, slipped under the door like contraband. Catherine found it one gray afternoon, her face draining of color as she slid it open by the library window. Richard, her ex-husband, penitent in prose. Regrets over the affair, offers of reconciliation, a veiled plea for the vineyard's deed. He thinks he can waltz back, she spat, crumpling the paper, but her hands shook. Elena, sensing the tremor, drew her close, but Catherine's eyes sought mine across the room. What do I do, Alex? Forgive? Or let it fester? We gathered that evening, the fire crackling as solstice candles flickered on the mantel. Elena advocated mercy. Clay cracks, but it re-hard stronger. But Catherine paced, her limp echoing her turmoil. It's not just him. It's the lie I lived for decades pretending. The air grew heavy, the betrayal's echo amplifying. I thought of Charlotte miles away, and the fragile trust we'd rebuilt. You don't owe him absolution, I said softly. But you owe yourself the truth. She stopped, tears carving paths down her cheeks. The truth is, I loved him once. And part of me still hates that. The call to Charlotte came at midnight, her voice tinny over the line from a Barcelona flat share. Mom's spiraling, I explained, cradling the phone in the alcove. She arrived 2 days later, train-weary but fierce, her duffel thudding on the tiles. The confrontation unfolded in the vineyard at dawn, frost crunching underfoot as the four of you stood amid the dormant rose. Catherine clutched the letter, wind tugging at her scarf. He wants to come home, she confessed, voice raw. Charlotte's face hardened, the daughter who'd armored her mother's wounds now facing the blade anew. Home? This isn't his anymore. You built it, we built it, without him. Words escalated, windswept and wounding. Charlotte accusing Catherine of weakness, Catherine lashing back at years of silent complicity. Elena and I flanked them, silent witnesses, until Charlotte whirled on me. And you staying here playing savior. Is this what friendship buys? Another layer of mess. Her barb struck true, the paid help ghost rising again. I stepped forward, rain starting to spit from the clouds. No. It's love, Lottie. Messy, unasked for love. The word hung electric, and for a moment, the flicker between us reignited. Not romantic but profound, a recognition of souls intertwined. Catherine crumpled then, sinking to her knees in the mud, the letter dissolving in the downpour. We knelt with her, arms encircling, the storm washing away the last veneers. I choose us, she sobbed. This family we forged. Charlotte held her tighter, apologies murmuring into auburn hair. Elena traced patterns in the wet earth, grounding us all. By the time we trudged back, soaked and shivering, the climax had crested. Not in ruin but release. Richard's plea went unanswered, the deed secured, the vineyard ours. A testament to chosen kin. January thawed into tentative springs, the land mirroring our mending. Catherine and Elena hosted a solstice redux, inviting neighbors for a bonfire feast. Spit-roasted lamb, fiddles scraping Andalusian laments, stars wheeling overhead. Charlotte unveiled her Barcelona series, digital prints of fractured hearts reassembled, one gifted to her mother with a note. To the woman who taught me breakage is beautiful. I hung mine in the guest room, a swirl of blues and golds evoking the bay's moods, a quiet claim on the space I'd come to call temporary home. The romance wove subtle threads. Catherine and Elena's first trip, a weekend in Tangier where markets brimmed with taginess and tales. They returned sun-flushed, Elena's fingers intertwined with Catherine's, sharing photos of Casbah sunsets. Charlotte, emboldened, started seeing a street artist, a non-binary soul with tattoos like living ink, her updates laced with giddy nerves. First date jitters at 25, she'd text me. Send wine. I'd reply with vineyard selfies, our banter a lifeline across the miles. As for the bond that started it all, Charlotte and me, it evolved into something luminous, unscripted. Spring brought her back for Semana Santa. Processions of hooded penitents marching through Cadiz streets like echoes of our past sins. We slipped away one night, post-procession, to a hidden cove near Bologna, the dunes silvered by moonlight. Barefoot in the surf, waves lapping our ankles, she turned to me. That summer, I thought I'd lose you. To her, to the drama. I traced a shell in the sand, heart full. You didn't. We're the constant. She pulled me into a hug, fierce and salt-sprayed, her head on my shoulder. Sisters, then? Or whatever this epic thing is. Laughter bubbled up, freeing. Epic works. Back at the finca, Catherine and Elena waited with hot chocolate and churros, the four of us collapsing into easy chatter, plans for the Puente launch party spilling like confetti. The humanistic close unfolded in May, as the first buds swelled on the vines. We gathered for a private tasting in the barrel room, lamplight gilding the oak casks. Catherine poured the golden liquid, her hand steady. To bridges burned and built, she toasted, eyes shining. We sipped, the wine's notes of almond and brine unfolding on the tongue. A story in every swallow. Betrayal's bite had mellowed into depth, conflict into complexity. The drama of our lives decanted into something shareable, sustaining. Catherine found her footing in advocacy, volunteering with a Seville group for expatriate women navigating divorce, her story a beacon. Elena's gallery show featured a series inspired by the finca, vessels of cracked porcelain, mended with gold. Charlotte's art went viral in indie circles, her TEDx talk on designing from the fracture, drawing tears and applause. And I stayed on, transitioning to vineyard manager, the land's rhythm syncing with my own. No grand romance for me yet, just the quiet thrill of possibility, letters from old flames in Seville, coffee dates with a poet from Chipiona. In the end, Western Spain's wild heart cradled us, not as a cage but a canvas. We painted it with aches and ambers, betrayals transfigured into belonging. The bond forever altered? Yes, stronger, scarred, sublime. And as the Atlantic sang its eternal lullaby, we listened, whole in our multiplicity, loving fiercely under the unblinking stars.